But yeah, it's been a bit of a miserable week with injuries.
Yeah, no,
So
that's a scary injury, dude. That happened to me once in residency, and I was like worried
yeah.
for like days because whenever you're doing surgery or a procedure and you kind of prick yourself and you don't know what the status of the patient is and if
Dude,
they
you have
have
no, yeah,
HIV.
you have no idea.
So what happened again?
So, I mean, this is like it hasn't happened to me in a long time, but it happened 2 weeks in a row. So last week, I was just suturing at the end of the case, which is like very common. I mean, I've probably thrown like 10,000 stitches by now. And I was just like turning it and I was adjusting the needle and I just like I was absent-minded. I was talking to the scrub tech and I just poked myself and I stabbed myself with the needle after I had already passed a bunch of sutures. So obviously the patient's blood was on it and everything. And I was like, oh shit. So I took off my glove to check real quick and sure enough, there was like a little dot of blood on my finger. I was like, oh man, this is just
Oh Lord.
because it's just going to be annoying now. Like the
Yeah.
probability is that the patient's negative, you're going to be fine, whatever. But the whole charade, I scrubbed out, washed my hand, whatever, came back in, finished the closure. We got to draw the patient's blood. No one remembers the protocol. What type of tube do you get? What type of reagent has to be in there, right? And you send it
No.
off for HIV, hepatitis C. And then the protocol is you got to get your own blood drawn too, so you have your own baseline. So now I'm sitting there, and it's Ramadan. I'm fasting, and I was like, oh man, now I gotta like draw my blood. And so that's why I sent that message in our group. I was like, hey, if you get a blood draw, does it break your fast? Because it's
Yeah.
like it's uncertain.
Yeah.
If that's the case. Thankfully, that patient was negative for everything, and I was fine. Then the next week, dude, it was just so dumb. It was we were fixing a fracture, me and the resident, and I was putting a pin in. I was drilling it through. I was basically putting it through the forearm, from one bone and through the ulna, through the interosseous membrane, through the radius, and I wanted it out a little bit on the outsides because if God forbid it breaks in the center and it's not all the way out on both sides, you can't take it out. You got to like cut the bone. It's a problem. So you want it a little bit prominent on both sides in case you need to remove it. So I was sending it and like the drill was getting stuck, so I was just like forcing it a lot, and I was holding the patient's forearm to stabilize it, and,
Lord.
and I just stabbed myself right in the hand, and yeah, obviously it hurt. I still have like the little mark on my hand there, but same thing. I was just like, God damn it! Drew the patient's blood, drew my blood. Thankfully, that was negative too. Um, but then the next day, I'm playing with my son with Rayan in the backyard, and we're kicking the soccer ball in the soccer goal. And there's like, we bought the house a few months back, so it's still new, and there's still like a bunch of stuff I'm doing in the yard. And there's this huge block of concrete that has been sitting in the backyard for a long time, and I've just kind of ignored it. And I was like, I'm just gonna pick this up and move it, take it to the front yard, and put it out so the trash guys can take it. And it's a pretty, I mean, it's like pretty sizable chunk of concrete. So I reach around and grab it. I didn't even look, and as soon as I put my arm around and grab it, something sharp pokes me. And I was like, what the hell is that? So I turned around and looked. There's this huge nail sticking out from the back side of it. I was like, what bad
Hope you
luck.
got your tetanus shot, dude.
Dude, and it was like all rusty and had mud on it. And I was like, this
Oh
is the worst.
God.
I'm going to get an infection. Like, clean it. And I called the clinic. It was the weekend. So I called the clinic manager. I was like, hey, listen, this just happened. And at first she made fun of me. Then she told me I was an idiot. And both are probably true. And so then this morning at work, I went and got a tetanus shot. Series of unfortunate
No,
events.
but you probably did get the tetanus shot when your baby was born, so you probably got the Tdap, right? But you have to get the booster whenever that happens.
Dude, I don't even remember. I
I
was
just
just
got
like,
mine like 10 year once in the 10 year, Tdap or whatever.
yeah. Just with how dirty that rusty nail was, I was like,
Yeah, you
just
had
give
to.
me the
Yeah,
booster.
yeah. I mean, that's a series of unfortunate events. That's
I know,
yeah,
dude. I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow.
that's why you have to let the computer do it eventually.
Dude, I know that. So when AI replaces doctors in the far-flung future, we won't be getting needle stabs anymore in our own hands.
Yeah, you can let the robots get HIV.
Yeah, there you go. They'll probably get some other weird computer AI virus.
Yeah, I mean they're always viruses, right? So, but it's been an exciting few months. I know we like last year when we kind of started the podcast, we had a whole discussion about the AI and I feel like now looking back at that episode, I feel like I was so naive about AI and what it could do.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, AI itself has expanded so much. I don't, I mean,
Yeah.
the technology has been there for a long time. I feel like the public's use of it, like my own use of it, has expanded a lot. I mean, it went from kind of like a cool gimmick. Oh, look, I can type this and ChatGPT gives a cool response to like, now it's like very task oriented. I'm sure you feel the same way. Like I'm actually like using it beyond the initial cool factor. I've like incorporated it a lot more in like some
Yeah.
daily routines.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just that we're using it different. I truly think the capabilities have like really expanded over the past year. I mean, the capabilities of what AI can do and what these models can do, right? There's so many new models, so many different agents. Like, so the 1 year ago, most of us were using Chat GPT, and that was a very common thing to use. And, maybe some of us were using Gemini here and there. But
Yeah.
then, Claude Anthropic came out of nowhere, and I think for me now, it's a primary source that I go to, right?
I
I think
agree. It's totally supplanted ChatGPT for me. Claude is my
completely,
go-to for sure. Way more
completely,
complete answers and way more detailed too.
way more detailed. Claude has become such a essential part of the work I do, and then there's so many other options and variations now. Things like Perplexity, the browser, or different automation agents like Zapier, and Notebook LLM is a big part of the stuff that I do. So we'll go more into that. But I think there's three phases of how people are using AI right now. And one phase is the easy, like the simple route. What most majority, I think, 80% of the population is using is they have a question in their mind and they go in and they ask a question and answer and then they get those answers, right? And then they're like, oh, cool. Or they want to write an email, and then they go in and they write an email, or they create a blog post and they put it into ChatGPT or Claude or whatever their source is, and they get the answer or a better version of that email, and they use that. So most people, when they say they're using I think right now that's what they're using, and that's the basic use of AI. Then there's the middle use of AI that I think that most people are using, and then they're doing basic automations like their task creating newsletters or daily newsletters for themselves, or they're having their uh, tasks get automated where they get an email and the tasks get automated. So using this agentic AI where they
Yeah.
have different automations created for themselves, and that's a little bit more advanced. That's a medium level. And then the third level, how people are using, I think it's the most advanced level where they have autonomous agents that are working on their own, which they've assigned and created, and they're doing the work for people, and that's already happening, right? The autonomous agents, and that's much more advanced. And just getting there and knowing how to design one with the safeguards, that takes a lot of work and knowledge and education. So I think there's different, but I think majority of the people, like 80-85% of people, are still at the basic use of AI where they're just asking a question, getting answers.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, I guess that's, if you think of like most of these newer technologies or like any digital, I guess digital technology, digital medium, the vast majority of people are superficial level users. Think about social media like Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. The average person that is on those, that is a user of these social media platforms, just uses it to scroll and peruse and kind of absorb information and content. They're not a content creator. The average person is not. I mean, very few people are actually real habitual content creators. And out of those creators, some do it for fun. How many actually monetize it and become very successful? And now that is their thing, and a real income stream. So like that percentage decreases in terms of like what you define as meaningful or advanced use. So I'm just using that social media example, but I think it's the same thing with AI, like you're saying, Humayun, that the vast majority of people use it for like maybe 1% of the actual capability that the AI has. And there's so much under the surface that people haven't even really scratched.
Yeah, and there's so many different AI agents that there is a certain fatigue of AI as well, right? I mean, I think it's very easy to start learning and knowing where to even start, right? I mean, someone gets in and they say, okay, I want to learn AI, and I want to learn there's the different possibilities of what I can do. Once you start doing that, and you realize that not any model is perfect in what they're doing, and there's so many sub models and different systems that are great for doing their niche thing, right? and each of them has a little membership fee. So then it gets overwhelming. How much do you pay for, right? I'm already paying a lot for Claude per month. I'm paying for ChatGPT, which I barely use now. I'm paying for Gemini.
It's kind of
Now,
like all those like streaming services online.
yeah,
It's like, oh, I got Apple TV, I got Hulu, I got Disney, I got Netflix, I got Amazon Prime, I got HBO. Dude, you ain't watching all of those in a week, but you're paying so many subscriptions. It's like it's the same thing with AI.
yeah, exactly. And when you don't are not learning something, for example, uh, Claude Code. Like for example, I started doing a lot of coding. Like I had no education on coding. I had no idea what a software engineering is, how to code. I took maybe a coding class back in ninth grade of high school. And since then I haven't done any computer science, but I started using Claude Code to create softwares for my practice. And what I started noticing, there were certain bottlenecks. The staff was not able to complete certain tasks because of lack of communication. None of the EMRs that we have in medical practices are up to task for how my practice runs and how specific boutique practices run. They're made as general generic softwares. So to kind of customize softwares to my practice, I started coding, and I started doing vibe coding where I was telling it what to do and it was creating it for me. And I went down this whole rabbit hole where I ended up creating 3 different softwares for my practice, and then ended up uh, you know kind of putting them all together into one big practice application. The thing is that uses a lot of bandwidth, right? You have to keep paying money, and once you create softwares, now you have to start paying for the online storage of the data that's being on there. You have to make sure it's secure. You have to make sure that it's password protected, and all those require some kind of storage fee or hosting fee, and then even Claude, like for the basic Claude model, which is $20 a month, you cannot get that much work done in a day because the data gets used up very fast. So I ended up paying a lot more for the higher level of Claude, where I can do much more and create more things with the capabilities that it had. So as you're learning these things, you do spend a lot of money, and you know, it adds up. Like there's people that swear by things like Manus or Zapier to automate your life, and now do you pay $20 per month or $200 a year for each of them, and
Yeah,
to
how many subscriptions are you paying for? How many are actually meaningfully making you that efficiency money, if you want to think of it that way, offloading yourself to justify the subscription cost? I do think a lot of those probably will go down. And same thing with the storage limits or the data usage limits that you have per day, per week, per month. When the internet like was new and websites first came about, there was no such thing as unlimited data, unlimited storage, unlimited whatever. Now that's commonplace. I mean, it's like unheard of for you to go buy a domain name and host a website and you don't have unlimited usage per day. It's just a thing now because the process has gotten so much more efficient, right? I mean, the ability to store and use data in the form of a website, which is most websites are pretty static, is just easier and doesn't really require a lot. I mean, I've had my own website, Med School Declassified, for a long time. I've had it since 2012 when I first made it. And I remember, like, at that time, even, which isn't like that long ago in the span of the internet, a lot of the hosting plans did have limits on them, and you had to pay for extra storage and extra usage. And I remember I was like, man, I don't want to pay that much money. I'm not generating anything from
yeah.
it. It's just for fun. I'll just get the cheap plan. But like now, it's ubiquitous. It's just is unlimited. And I think AI will move that way too. Right now, the ask for data and storage is super high. I mean, AI algorithms require a ton of energy and storage and server capacity, which is going to change. I mean, everything gets more efficient with time. Semiconductors get more efficient. And so I don't think the current model, at least in terms of subscription fees and the limitation with data, is going to remain in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Claude is definitely, the way I see it right now, and the reason I justify myself spending money on these things is I think of it as an apprenticeship, right? I think of it as a like education. Like I'm
It's like you're
spending that
paying
money.
tuition, basically.
I'm pretty much paying tuition and using all these agents and these softwares to kind of figure out where I want to go, where I want to take them. Maybe in a year or so, something will be useless and something will be more useful. Just like 1 year ago, I thought ChatGPT was great and it was a market leader, and now I do not think so. I think it's fallen way behind, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
the dynamism right now within the AI world, in which I guess, which competing companies and which of their products are the so-called best or the most efficient, or at least the ones that get the most hype. It is changing so fast. I
so
mean,
fast.
it's crazy. I can't keep up with it.
Yeah, within months. I mean, the way I see it is, it was ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and then Claude was always kind of more focused towards writing code and writing long form stuff, and then slowly Claude started taking over, and it 4.6 Opus was like just amazing, which surpassed it by far, right? And I
Yeah.
think Gemini is starting to catch up quite a bit and going pretty fast, and Gemini is getting actually really good. ChatGPT is has been good and has been doing what it's supposed to do, right? But then there's Grok, right, which is Elon's company, and they're doing their own thing because they get most of their data from Twitter and Xfair, the X stratosphere, and it's
Yeah.
somewhat useful in kind of figuring out world news and what's going on, what people are talking about, right? So there's certain uses for each, and the way I've personally started doing this, and this might not be something for that everyone wants to do or everyone needs to do. Is I do currently have all of them except Grok as something I pay for, Gemini, Claude, and ChatGPT. But I've designed ChatGPT to be a contrarian to me, right? I've fed it information and prompted it and designed it so anything that I believe in and I say and I bring up, it says the opposite and questions me and why that needs to be done. So what I'm using ChatGPT now as someone who calls me out on my ideas rather than agree with me, right? Because that was an issue that a lot of people were noticing with a lot of these AI agents. When you tell them something, they always agree with you and they say, yeah, you should do that or you should not do that. But you can't personalize them and instruct them to be a certain way. And when you go and personalize them, and you can choose any one of them, but I just chose ChatGPT as one of those agents that anytime I say that I'm thinking about doing this or this is what I want to do, what do you think? It always questions me and calls me out on that. So it's also
Yeah, I
how
like
you,
that. That's a really interesting design to like make it almost force it to challenge your thoughts.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, Claude is my twin, and that's kind of how I've designed it, where Claude knows a lot more about me and kind of gives me advice based on the things I know, right? But the more the older you grow, and the wiser you get, you realize that most of the time you're wrong about things. You always want someone to question you. You have to have
Right.
that open dialogue and kind of complete. We were talking about Ray Dalio's book, The Principles, and one of his principles is complete transparency and questioning everything and having a triangulation of thoughts, right? Having triangulate with other people and other wise people that know and run your ideas by them. So it's always good to have someone who calls you out on your BS.
Yeah, you're basically making your own little think tank.
Yeah, and you can do that. You can tell Claude to be your CEO and your ChatGPT to be your CFO, where it kind of tells you, hey, there's limit on this. You should not do this, and you can tell Gemini to be your operator. These are just ideas, not that everyone needs to do that or everyone has to do that. These are just ideas what people can sometimes do. Like Gemini is great for image creation, like we've
Yeah.
created logos for that, right? Using that Gemini. I mean, the how fast it creates images and how fast it creates videos and sounds and
And the
music. That's
quality
amazing.
is so good. I mean,
Yeah, the quality is amazing, and you can keep telling it what to do, and it'll alter it, and it does a good job. And 6 months ago, Gemini was not able to be that good in doing that. So I feel like this is a race right now, and they're all growing and getting better, but they're also developing their own strengths, and Claude is good for certain things and ChatGPT is good for certain things and Gemini is good for certain things. I don't know what Grok is good for yet, but probably Muse.
Grok is like that one racist neighbor that lives down the street that it's always entertaining when they show up to a party, but you probably never want to be alone with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Grok is kind of going to suffer because of Elon's persona, right? That he's kind of
Yeah,
created his reputation. I mean, it's
right.
going to suffer a little bit, but people will be skeptical of what is being fed. Not that we can kind of talk about that, the government interference and the use of these technologies by the government, right? That's
Tons. I mean, that's a huge topic because that can completely subvert how these things will be used. I mean, look at what's happened with Claude and ChatGPT in the sense of like the whole Venezuela debacle. I mean, when the U.S. government went in not that long ago. I mean, now everything is, I mean, our recency effect is so strong. Everything is the Iran war right now. We've even forgotten that like a month and a half ago, we just sent a group of commandos in, totally knocked out the entire capital of Venezuela and kidnapped their president.
Yeah.
And Claude was used like the Pentagon used Claude and its algorithms in order to help execute that attack and do some of the, I guess, some of the digital attack to cause a citywide blackout. And Anthropic and Dario Amodei, the CEO, was very against that, and he was in particular very against allowing Claude and his technology to be used for potentially autonomous killing, autonomous targeted killing, and that was a huge issue. And like Pete Hegseth, the Department of Defense, or for the time being now christened Department of War, has made some very aggressive inflammatory statements about that, and that basically the federal government will just come in and take your technology, usurp your technology if you don't agree. Basically, like play ball or get out is the ultimatum he gave. And ChatGPT and Sam Altman, they're opportunists. They jumped in and they signed that contract with the government to use their algorithms for that reason. And that just shows, like what you were saying, Humayun, the government interference and the ability to get these government contracts, these multi-million, multi-billion dollar contracts that changes the whole game. Because that changes what these algorithms are used for. It changes how the data that all of us, me and you, everyone is using it, feeding it data, making it smarter. What is going to be the consequence of that if they're going to be used for government mass surveillance, even autonomous killing? I mean, all this stuff. It's a
Yeah.
huge question mark.
I mean, it's amazing to me how blatant this is, right? Because there were two demands that Anthropic had. I mean, they were okay with them using in all uses except two, and those two were no use of their technology in autonomous weapon creation, where they can it can be used to just be an automatic killing machine. And the second was no mass surveillance on American citizens, not even foreign citizens,
Yeah.
American citizens, no mass surveillance. And the government, that's where the whole contention was. That's where they were arguing about. Anthropic did not want those two conditions, under those two conditions, the technology to be used, and the government wanted that. And I don't understand why people are not seeing that and don't think that's completely wrong. And it's amazing to me that Sam Altman was able to just come in and make that deal with the government, and possibly, we don't know the exact terms of the deal, but possibly allowing them to use their technology for mass surveillance and autonomous killing, right?
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's just like the public, and I am including myself in this, even though I don't think as the mainstream does, I guess I'll say, but like we are so numbed to all this stuff. I mean, look back at Edward Snowden before the average person knew the word artificial intelligence. I mean, Snowden already told us all this stuff, that the NSA has already been doing mass surveillance on every goddamn person alive. Like it was already known. And then, other stuff like the Panama Papers come out and like those shell things like Mossack Fonseca and stuff, that billionaires are hiding money and doing all this illegal stuff for decades and decades. But what happened from that? I mean, like nothing. The public has known about it, I guess, in the periphery, but we're too busy in whatever the hell we're doing day to day. So this is just like that. I mean, Palantir, like their whole business model is mass surveillance. Their whole business model is to get government contracts for mass surveillance and control of the populace. It's not even an undercurrent. Like their CEO states that. And now ChatGPT, or OpenAI rather, not ChatGPT, but OpenAI, Sam Altman's thing, got this Pentagon contract because Claude wouldn't. So it's very blatant, but I think it's blatant because the public is almost neutered in their ability to do anything.
yeah, and people are just so excited about these technologies and using them and feeding the data to it, that they really are seeing past these deals. And I don't even think that most people stay in touch with what's really going on in the world, and what the government is up to sometimes. Because the younger I was, I was pretty trusting of the government at that time, and the older I've gotten, the more mistrust I've gotten, because some of the actions of the government. First of all, our government keeps changing every 4 years, and it's such a bipolar form of government where they're two completely opposite polar views, and they keep doing zigzag on their views, where there's no consistency in what the government does. At one point, one government comes in and they're skeptical of AI, and they want to curb it, and most of the people that are donating want to kind of be cautious about it. Then a government that completely gives us the open contract and to do whatever it wants, and there's no like one set policy where everyone can agree on. And I feel like as human beings we're bringing on our own demise by creating a lot of technology that can eventually become autonomous, take away tons of jobs. You know Personally, I used to be a lot more optimistic maybe 8 months ago, 9 months ago, about where the world is going, and what AI can do for us. But I just don't trust the people at the top that are working and creating these things right now, and the kind of deals they're making. It makes me very skeptical of the future with where everything is going. This technology is amazing. Either it can be used, put to good use, and create something amazing, and the world can be the utopia that everyone dreams of, or it can be a very dystopian future, something like 1984. The book George
Yeah,
Orwell.
and it almost like makes me think, on a long enough time scale, assuming all of the data and the hypotheses about AI and this like illusory concept of AGI, artificial general intelligence, where basically AI develops to the point that it is exceptional and instantaneous at everything, that it's not just task specific. Like this one AI is excellent for medical advice, this other AI is great for automating your Google Calendar and sending email reminders. Right now AI is very task specific, and it can automate stuff and can be semi-autonomous in doing things like that, but it's not across the board ubiquitously awesome at everything. But that's what AGI apparently is. And there's a lot of people that are like deep in the AI space and have been for a long time, professors, universities, computer science experts, guys at all of these companies, that are saying that AGI is not that far away, maybe 3 to 5 years is what a lot of estimates are. Whatever that actually means, if and when we get there, I mean, no one knows, and we'll find out if it happens. But my reason for bringing it up is that, are we potentially shaping whatever AI will become in like our own image, in whoever is making these algorithms, these companies, the leaders of these companies who set the vision and direction? Could AI be morphed into anything, like potentially with a moral code and on the good side of the spectrum versus on the evil side of the spectrum? Like, is that, potentially one of the reasons why Grok, run by Elon and all that stuff, is a little more crazy and less politically correct than some of these other algorithms in their responses? And what is going to be the end game of that? Like, will AI become basically how these billionaires are trying to push it and use it for surveillance and to make themselves richer and to secure contracts and to stifle dissent? Or will AI, once it reaches that point of more autonomous and generalized intelligence, will it just be able to self-select and just decide? And now that it understands and has access to all information, actually make whatever so-called is the best and right decision? I mean, that's a huge question.
Yeah. Well, the human mind has evolved through thousands and thousands and hundreds and thousands of years of small skills that we've picked up over time, from the caveman years to the agricultural revolution, to the industrial revolution, and the tiny skills we picked up in social behavior, financial planning, economics, and even as we've evolved over time, our mind has learned those ideas and those instincts, right? And even though a baby is born with none of that knowledge, our brain, as it's developed, has included those skills over time, and that's how we've evolved as human beings and have gotten smarter and smarter and smarter, in the sense that the amount of knowledge that we now have in our brains and about the world, it's pretty instinctual, right? I mean, a kid nowadays can, a 4 or 5 year old can just go to an iPad and start doing, scrolling or clicking buttons or changing the volume or turning it off and on, which if you presented the same thing to a kid maybe 50 years ago, they would not be able to even know what to do with it, right? It's just kind of instinctual that society just learns over time, and kids pick up much more easier, and then they grow with that, and the next generation just builds onto that, right? These AI algorithms don't have those experiences as human beings, but they have a lot of knowledge and data points. It's going to be interesting of how they connect those data points, right? Because the brain is just neurons and synapses firing in certain ways and making those connections to create logical thinking and perception and ideas, right? But how will AI use those data points and what kind of perspective it will have, right? I mean, the AI has knowledge about what the industrial revolution was, or what the mass uprisings were, what the French Revolution was, or what the American Revolution was, and what how masses rose and overthrew the oppressors and took over, and kind of created a government out of self determination, right? They have that data point, but what will it make of it? I don't know. Like, I don't know how it
Yeah,
will
what's
interpret that.
interesting, like what I think about sometimes is that, you know, currently all the information that, like, I guess what we call information and knowledge and all that stuff, really it's just like the human interpretation of what actually happened in real life, right? That's history is not actually what happened. History is some dude wrote it down, and that's their perception with their biases, blah blah blah, selecting to put stuff in, selectively omitting certain things, right? So I think currently AI has access to obviously all of that information, but all of that information is incomplete in a way. It has biases instilled into it. But going forward in the future, with humans like us constantly using it, constantly interacting with it, the types of questions we ask, why we ask those questions, the time of the day we ask them, what is relevant to us in our lives, on a whole population scale with like billions of people using AI all the time, I think that is the biggest actual data set in real time, right here and right now, not subject to any group's bias because everyone is doing it individually. All this data is being fed into AI all the time. Like this conversation is being fed into AI, right? It's going to be on the internet. Like AI is having access to this data and learning from it in real time, something that has never happened before in human history. No human can learn in real time like this across the board. We have to learn from the past, right? And our own individual actions, not the collective actions and the collective thoughts of the entire planet. I think that is something that's very new. And that's something to circle back to what you said, Humayun, like AI can learn about, the Industrial Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution, all that stuff. Sure, it can learn about what we thought about it or what the writers thought about it, but it is learning about all of humanity right now, which we don't even know about ourselves because
Yeah.
we as humanity are giving it the information.
Yeah, so I wonder if AI and as it turns into, and some people believe it's already has, turns into AGI and singularity, will that brain, the intelligence in that would be a much more humane and compassionate being, as we say, or someone that understands mostly humanity and what people are feeding in and what people's inner fears are and what people's feelings are about certain things, because people are feeding a lot of having a lot of personal conversations, right? Will it
Yeah.
have a lot more of that perspective and a very little part of what the corporate overlords are thinking and what their what their views are, right? Will it kind of address the masses and their viewpoints and kind of take that in, or will there be manipulation from their end and they will be able to make it think and act in how they wanted to act, and who has control, and will AI even let it control them? Because I remember with Grok, there was this whole incident with where it was calling the white genocide in South Africa a thing, and I think Elon and company tried to alter it, and it kept saying there was no such thing as white genocide in South Africa, and Elon and company tried to alter it and make it say that no, hey, there was this thing, and
Right.
it ended up calling them out, saying, "Hey, you're trying to manipulate me, and you need me to say this, but I'm not going to say this." Right? There's a whole incident. So we've seen some of these models being resistant to change and manipulation, and I wonder if the fact that we're feeding so much human data and people's the masses views in it, will it end up more sympathetic to the ideas of what masses believe and what humanity is, or will it be manipulated by the corporate overlords who are designing it, right?
Yeah,
So
it's a huge question. I mean, I think like, if you really think about and let it play out, like the long-term potential of like if AI reaches this level, that it is basically this sentient, digital entity that is interfaced with everything. and has access to any and all knowledge, pattern recognition, surveillance in real time, everything. Hopefully, to your like moral dilemma in a way, hopefully it really tunes into that human side and the general use and the thoughts and the dilemmas on a day-to-day basis that the average human being has, rather than seeking to just increase profits, have the biggest benefit for a small number of people, right? That's what the C-level suites in these AI companies are looking for. I mean, really, only time will tell. I don't know. It's just like a new thing.
It is.
You know, it kind of reminds me like, have you seen you've seen the Terminator movies, right? Like those famous movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger, like Skynet. Basically, once it like awakens or so-called, there's like some threshold where AI has just become autonomous, become all-knowing, become sentient, and it just takes over. And when it takes over, basically, it just decides that humanity on the whole cannot, should not survive or whatever. And there's many apocalyptic scenarios like that, right? Because that's what movies sell. A movie wouldn't really sell if, well, look, you hit the threshold and now AI is friends with people. Like, okay, the movie's over.
Yeah.
Right? You need some conflict, but like that's a possibility. And the converse possibility might be that it may actually make life better for everybody. We just don't know. It's a huge question, which is what makes a lot of people who are very, very deep in the AI space very worried.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we always think of these corporations as people, right? And we expect them to have a soul and expect them to have sympathy and expect them to have some empathy towards the world. They want to do good for the world, but we have to remember corporations are not people. They don't have feelings. All they care about is the bottom line and the benefits to the shareholder. And that's what by design corporations are. You cannot expect them to do good for the world. You cannot expect them to. That's not in their design, right? But AI on the other end is a accumulation of all the knowledge, all the feelings, all the ideas that human beings are feeding into it, right? All our history, and so will AI be something different? Will AI truly have empathy and human the qualities of having wanting good for the world, right? Because it could be, because that's it's we're making it, we're designing it, and we're feeding all the data into it. Our feelings are going in there, our ideas are going in there, our history is going into there, and that kind of makes you ponder what truly consciousness is. And consciousness, our brains are pretty much computers, and it's a connection of different ideas and neurons and synapses talking to each other because of the knowledge we've gained over time. Our brains are pretty much a type of intelligent being that's taking in all the knowledge and synthesizing it and makes it our views, and that's kind of what AI is becoming.
Yeah, I mean, our brains are like a biologic computer, and this is just a silicone-based computer. I mean,
Yeah. So I mean, AI is becoming, and my hope is that it takes in, because in my belief, like majority of the humanity is good. They want to do good. They want the well-being of humankind. So if majority of the masses have their views put in and their ideas put in into these models, and it learns from that, the hope is, which I'm always very skeptical of, the hope is that it turns out to be overall good for humanity, right?
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the hope. I'm a skeptic at baseline, and my worry is twofold. Well, I've kind of alluded to it a lot about AI, and like if it takes over, not in the sense that, oh my gosh, robots are gonna come banging on your door and like blast you, not in that like silly movie way, so much as like we are just so dependent on giving control of our systems that make society run to AI that we just cannot survive without it. And going hand in hand with that is like, at what point does our humanity get at risk of being lost? And what I mean by that is like now, a lot of people, and this is well known, and I mean, there's even been cases of like suicide of people when they've been talking to AI about their fears and stuff like that. Like, at what point do we stop regular, normal human to human interaction and difficult conversations, struggle with thoughts, and be challenged by other people versus having those with your digital interface? And what is the consequence of that? Because like you were talking about, Humayun, like we've had millions of years of development and evolution in a slow process to interact with each other and connect with each other. And one of the things that is consistently shown in studies after studies after studies, and even anecdotes, if you're listening to this, you can think about your own life. Real happiness comes from when two people really connect and you make a real connection, and you're intimate with each other. Whether with friends, with family, whatever. That's what is a source of happiness. You have people around you that, and you feel a sense of belonging. And that is not the same thing as interacting with the digital interface, because you don't have the social cues, you don't have the physical touch, you don't have the nonverbal communication, which is in fact well more than 50% of what real communication is. None of that exists in AI. And AI can have, fancy audio that sounds like a human. You can even have a picture of someone on the screen that looks exactly like us. But it's a different thing of real life in-person communication. And that is already being lost with the social media advent, well before the AI advent. And so that is a big worry to me personally about society, that people are getting more and more used to interacting with their AI agents, with AI LLMs rather than other human beings, even using voice chat to talk to AI and AI talk back to them. I mean, there's so many different things, but I think there's a risk of us losing a bit of our humanity, and it could have a very big negative impact on a societal level if we lose that, because it's too rapid of a change. It's very contrary to real biology and our path of evolution.
Yeah, I think there's a real balance we have to talk about here because there is the risk of losing your humanity, kind of getting way deep into the rabbit hole where you get stuck, just completely immersed into this AI universe where all you're talking to is these agents, and overusing these apps and kind of not truly using your brain to really think and letting it complete think for you. That's one side. The other one is where someone does not use any of these technologies, right? And all their output is put one in, get one out, right? I think of a lot of these technologies as leverage, and leverage is, a very important idea in being successful. Where sometimes you have to, when you put one in, 10 comes out, right? 1 unit of work creates 10 units of output, and that's how I see a lot of these AI utilities, where it's allowing me as a busy physician to be much more productive, being able to do 5 different tasks, automate a lot of my menial tasks, and letting AI do some of these ideas, and for me to be able to focus on patient care and using my knowledge in taking care of my patients, being more human with my patients, right? And being more productive and create more things like this podcast, and some of the writing that I do online, like my Substack. So it's allowing me to do that because it's creating that leverage for me, because I'm putting in less work and it's able to create much more for me. But where do you lose that balance where you completely stop thinking for yourself and just completely get immersed in it and let it do all the thinking? And then as it does all the thinking, your brain atrophies, and now you can't even write a simple email without having to get it checked by an AI agent, right?
Yeah, you become too dependent on it. I mean, it's kind of like, even in a more simplistic sense, like spell check. In Microsoft Word, long before even the internet. When Windows 95 was there, some version of Microsoft Word was there, and spell check got added at some point. And I mean, it's a question of like, eventually people stopped caring as much or worrying as much about spelling correctly. The spelling bee in school is not as big of a deal now as it used to be. Everything is digital. In our text messages, there's autocorrect. When we voice type, it autocorrects. There's AI tools, AI-based tools like Grammarly or Gramify, whatever it's called, where you can upload that little extension in Chrome and it'll automatically look at stuff. So like the ability to spell has gone away, and that I'm not saying that spelling is a critical skill, but I'm using that as an example that we've lost something that used to be like a huge thing in communication. That written communication was everything back in society. You would write letters to people, and that's how messages got sent. That's how policies were made. That's how politics and law occurred. And you had to be a good writer. You had to know how to write. You had to know how to flow words on a page so that people would listen, people would take heed, and it was spelled correctly so that you seem professional. And now there's tools to supplant that. And yes, it's more efficient for sure, but that's something we've lost. And I don't know if it's always good to have an outside thing take over a function that made us human, made us as a society. Like, I don't see, again, just using spelling as an example, I don't see a benefit of society not spelling well. I don't really see a benefit of humans not knowing how to spell words well because we're so reliant on other stuff.
Yeah, and I truly, I mean, I do agree with that, but there's also the idea that there are so many different things being released and so many new technology being released. You do want to stay on top of everything, right? You want to maybe try it out, see how kind of use your life as a playground for these ideas, right? For these different technologies where you can adopt a technology for 2 weeks and try something out and see how that's working. And that's how humans have always kind of worked things out on a macro scale, where they um, do something, use something, adopt something. Like for example, at some point, the VR headsets were becoming a thing where people were trying them out and people were buying them and seeing how virtual reality is, and that kind of died down and not did not take off as well at that time. Or same with things like NFTs, where people adopt, people use them, make use of them, kind of learn them, and then they realize this is not for us, right?
Dude,
So
and the whole NFT craze is it was such a scam, dude. It was crazy.
I never bought any of those,
I
thankfully.
didn't either.
Yeah, but see, but people were very high into it. They thought that that was the future. That's going to be everything. And I was also talking about it, and I was looking into that, and I was like, that seems interesting. The idea is interesting, but but if you don't do that, you truly don't understand what's good for you, what not. And one thing is, you can either let other people try it out for you and find out if it's good for you or not, and but maybe at that time the opportunities that could come out of it may be lost, right? So it's one of those things. If you want to be at the forefront of things and kind of figure things out and learn, and if there's something, and if there's an area where you can benefit from and create some waves and create a benefit for your society, for yourself, for your family, uh, you want to be the early adopter and learn those things ahead of everyone else so you can get ahead, versus waiting for everyone to first use it. By that time it becomes too late and becomes ubiquitous, right? It's a balance. You have to figure out when you're overusing and letting your brain die, and when being an early adopter is the right thing.
Yeah, that's the balance is hard, man. I mean, like I'm saying all this stuff acting like a naysayer, but I use these tools a lot. Like I use Claude every day to ask it questions, look up stuff. I mean, if I'm doing like a consulting contract, I'll upload the contract and have it give me pros, cons, give me a red line draft version, whatever, and go back. Like it's so effective, it's so useful, and these are tasks that I could do on my own. It would take me longer. I may not do as good of a job because I'm looking at it from my own biases, and often it'll spit out, like using the contract as an example, a bunch of like it'll give an itemized list, section 2A, say this instead, or whatever. And sometimes I won't agree with it, so I'll change some stuff, or I'll say like, oh, I didn't pick up on this. I thought this was a big deal, and so I'll add stuff to it. So I don't think it's necessarily perfect, but that's like this is an abstract thing. There's not a right or wrong answer with a
Yeah,
lot of this stuff.
exactly.
Um, so I think it's important to not be solely reliant on it. I mean, these are tools, not answers, and that's an
Exactly.
important thing. And I think if you keep that mind frame, that helps make you more balanced at default, because you're not looking as if like, oh, this is like I'm in school again. Let's go to the back of the book. Okay, the answer is 12. Done. No, there's no answer. This is just like these are options. That's
Yeah.
how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, even when you had the answers in the back of the book, the best thing to do was to first solve it. If you
Yeah.
go back in the book, look at the right answer, then you're like, oh yeah, I
Right.
got it right. I know what I'm doing, or no, I did not get it right. Let me figure this out. Well, so you have to play around with it, try different things, question everything it says, and don't just believe everything it says. But there's a lot of cool things that you can even design yourself, where things like Notebook LLM. I don't know how much you've interacted or used Notebook LLM, but it's a really cool tool. It's by Google, and you can incorporate Gemini into it. What it can do is you can create notebooks, and all the information you feed into it is all the information it will have, right? So you could have all your contracts that you've had, or all the research papers that are pertinent to your field. You can just upload those and ask it questions according to those softwares or those documents or those videos or tables that you uploaded into that
Right,
one
right.
particular notebook. And what it can do on top of that is create mental models, mind maps, and even audio overviews where you can actually have an active podcast going about the information you just uploaded, and you can pretty much interact, and they can continue recording and create a podcast like we're having, right? So it's pretty much having, I can upload all of your Adil's brain into that notebook LLM, everything you learned into a notebook, and then just have this
That'd be a very small notebook, bro.
phones, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that is
that,
cool. Like I think that like the ability to customize it so much is cool. And
yeah,
I think it's very useful that like it's not just now asking basically like asking this algorithm to query the internet and return an answer. Like you choose its library of truth, right? You upload whatever, and now using that, it gives you a response, right? So
yeah.
especially like for what you're saying, you know, like evidence-based stuff or like very field specific, whether it's medicine or law or whatever, you upload a list of case studies in from business school and have it give you an answer that's relevant to those. You know, I think stuff like that is really cool.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I wish I had some of this stuff when I was in school, because I could have uploaded all my educational material, created like tests for myself to kind of learn that stuff, right? So, and that's a whole podcast to do, which is the future of education with the
yeah.
advent of AI, right? So let's not get into that. But using these tools to just continue teaching yourself and learning yourself is very useful. But the other thing that I'm very excited about, that I'm in the process of kind of playing with and setting up, is OpenClaw. Have you kind of looked into setting it up for
Yeah,
yourself?
dude. I'm just nervous about doing it. I mean, we've kind of talked about it offline too. Like, I wouldn't do it on my personal device that is linked to you know everything else, mainly because it has essentially unfiltered access to everything, and not only just access to the data, it can now do tasks and create outputs and make changes to
Yeah,
stuff in a semi-autonomous way, depending on how you
I,
direct it.
I got a Mac
Um,
Mini, so
yeah, that's smart, right? Like you're separating. It's almost like you have like a closed circuit TV system, right? Which
yeah,
is not dependent on anything else. You have a closed circuit that isn't connected to anything, and now through that you can use it. I think that's a safer way because I mean we have this thing just like came about at the end of January. It's not even
yeah,
that old. You know,
it's
it's
not.
very exciting. It's very new, um, but we just don't know how it's going to evolve.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, just keeping everything that you have separated from it, not letting it access any of your personal stuff, but maybe creating avenues and connections through other accounts, the shared accounts. I think that's probably the way to go. But and the thing is, the crazy part is things keep coming out. Just OpenClaw came out in January, and it was kind of viral in February, and everyone was buying Mac Minis, and Mac Minis are sold out, and people were setting up autonomous agents and creating their whole empires and making a lot of money actually. But then Perplexity just came out with Perplexity Computer, right? Which is very much similar thing with all the safeguards, and it's a browser-based agent that sits in the browser and can take over the computer and do all the tasks that OpenClaw is doing. It's built by Perplexity. It's $200 a month right now, whereas OpenClaw is much cheaper. But Perplexity, so within only a month, something like that, and going from a very highly autonomous agent to going to a more secure autonomous agent, and then eventually, even with the advent of Claude Cowork, I don't know if you've used any of that, but I use Claude Cowork in a separate computer. I let it organize all my folders, and within one folder where I did not have any personal files, and all it did was took up all the files, named it, put it into different folders, organized it, and gave me the folder, well organized. And all my files that were jumbled up, they were all of a sudden organized. So Cloud Core or something like that is very powerful. So there's so many things, and who knows, by the end of this year, this all will be irrelevant, and there will be something else that's completely,
Yeah.
completely
Dude, no, I mean it's
amazing.
just evolving so fast. I do think one of like this stuff like OpenClaw, I think is like kind of just like the beginning of systems integration. Like that's always been very challenging in just like the workplace as an example, like integrating different systems, like the electronic health record at one hospital versus another, the billing system or the billing company integrating with the EHR or not integrating with the EHR, the insurance verification process. you have a different EHR and clinic versus the hospital. The operative node is you know what I mean? Like all
Yeah.
these different systems don't really talk to each other, and it's almost kind of by design that they don't talk to each other. And in the past, you had to have some stupid API integration and access keys and stuff that you probably had to pay for, and only some softwares would talk to each other. But a lot of this stuff, I mean, it's almost seamless. It kind of eliminates the need for that digital middleman. Like, these
Yeah.
AI agents act as it, and they can interface across multiple systems and make one seamless workflow. I mean, I think that is huge.
Yeah.
To avoid misses, to avoid things that are lost in translation, lost in communication. It's much more it's much faster, right? Like, you get a referral from a patient. You don't have to wait for someone to call the referring provider, have them fax over something, send that to the insurance company as proof of a referral, then see the patient. Like, what a runaround. But that's like medicine today. I mean,
Yeah.
all of that can be circumvented if the systems just spoke to each other and it was instant. And that's possible now.
Where I see, and maybe it may or may not be possible in the United States, just because how protective we are of everything. Um, the way I see it is eventually a patient ownership of their own data and of their own referrals, of their own imaging studies, of all their health records in the cloud that they own with an encrypted key. In any doctor's office that they're going to, they can share that key that would extract that information from that patient's cloud that doctor's EMR with all the knowledge that they'll have, everything that's been done to that patient. And as the patients leaving their practice are no longer part of their practice, they can extract that information out of their EMR and then keep holding it. And I think that can be a truly secure way. The idea is, in theory, it sounds awesome, where a patient holds and the security of their data and can choose to share it with whichever practice it can integrate with, right? And then can extract it whenever it wants, so that data is not available for manipulation over time. That's the ideal case scenario. And I think in this setting, in this technology that we have, it's possible. Will it happen? And because how much of the world depends on patient data to sell them stuff, I'm very skeptical that it could happen, but that would be the ideal place where it could go. And, I would love for it to happen.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it just shows like how much what you just said, like the ability to control the data and then sell it for something else. I mean, even HIPAA, like, which is what everything we do is contingent on compliance with HIPAA for confidentiality. I mean, it's like illegal per HIPAA to even check your own medical record. You know what I mean? It's like, what the hell is that? It's your record, right?
Yeah.
But like, it's almost a preemptive law to prevent someone from owning, accessing, and controlling their own data how they see fit. Like, it's yours.
Yeah.
But kind of not really. Like, that's just how the system works. It's so weird.
We'll see, man. This is exciting. Let's see. And we'll probably keep coming back to the AI topic as things change. From our episode that we did, like maybe 10, 12, 13 episodes ago about AI, and that was more focused on AI and healthcare. This episode, I feel like so much has changed that there's so much more to talk about, and I think in 6 months there will be so much more to talk about as well.
For sure. I mean, it's the story of AI evolving is kind of I mean, it's like one of the biggest stories of our time right now. I mean, it's changing so much. It's very exciting.
Yeah. All right, bro.
All right.
Two dots on mic.
See you all
Eventually,
next
we'll
time.
have autonomous AI agents instead of us
Yeah,
talking.
exactly. Maybe we're not even real.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.